Okay, so picture this. You and your partner, huge fight.
Uh-oh.
And it's all because of the dishwasher.
The dishwasher?
Yep, we're talking full on. Did you rinse that properly? Trauma. Sounds kind of funny, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
But honestly, we've all been there, haven't we? And these little arguments, well, they can tell us a lot about how we communicate, especially when things get stressful, which is exactly what we're going to dive into today.
Makes sense.
So you requested we take a deep dive into Soul Deep Connection by Toya Attzs.
Oh, great book.
Yeah, and it's all about building those unshakable relationships, right?
Right.
So we'll be unpacking the book's key insights on things like communication, vulnerability, and, how to keep both me and we happy.
That me and we balance, that's a good one. And what's so interesting about Soul Deep Connection is that it reminds us that none of us are born knowing how to perfectly navigate relationships. We're all just figuring it out as we go. And, sometimes our own brains work against us, especially during those conflicts.
Oh, that is so true. I know I've definitely said things I wish I could take back, in the heat of the moment.
Happens to the best of us. Attzs explains it really well. She says that during arguments, our brains, they kind of go into this fight or flight mode.
Okay.
So basically your brain is just focused on survival. It's not really thinking about rational thought, you know? It's imagine our ancestors way back facing down a saber-toothed tiger.
Oh, wow.
Not exactly the best time to have a calm discussion about whose turn it is to empty the dishwasher, right?
No, definitely not. So is that why I kind of turn into a monster over unrinsed dishes? It's not just me being dramatic?
No, not at all. It's a physiological response. It's how we're wired. And this is where Attzs introduces what she calls the 3 communication culprits.
Okay.
The things that can really sabotage a conversation: blame, silence, and tone traps.
Okay, let's break those down. Blame, I think we all know what that looks like. It's that you always or you never. It's like the starter pack for an argument, right?
Exactly. It's all about making the other person the problem instead of actually focusing on the issue. Then there's what she calls the silence spiral.
Okay.
This is when you just withdraw, you shut down to avoid conflict altogether.
Ah, the silent treatment. Classic. Not exactly healthy communication, is it?
Not really, no. And lastly, there's the tone trap.
Okay.
This is when your tone of voice, it just undermines whatever you're trying to say, Think sarcasm, eye rolling, that kind of condescending tone that makes your partner want to launch the remote at you.
Oh, I've been on the receiving end of that one. Not fun. It makes you feel like you're being talked down to, even if the words themselves aren't that bad.
Exactly. And the crazy thing is, we often don't even realize we're doing these things, it's not intentional.
Right.
So Attzs offers a couple tools for, turning these communication disasters into something productive.
That would be helpful.
One of them is the Conflict Navigator cheat sheet.
A cheat sheet. That sounds good. What is that?
So it's basically like a script for replacing those kind of toxic phrases, the ones we just talked about, with phrases that are more likely to, lead to understanding.
Okay.
So instead of saying you always leave your clothes on the floor,
right,
you could try saying, hey, I feel stressed when the house is messy. Can we maybe work on this together?
Okay, so it's about shifting from blame to collaboration.
Exactly.
Yeah, it feels less like an attack and more like we're a team,
Exactly. You're expressing a need instead of placing blame.
That makes a lot of sense. It also has this tone chef exercise, right?
Oh, yes. This one's fun.
Okay.
So the idea is that you role play a recent argument.
Okay.
With your partner, and you record it.
Oh, on your phone?
Yeah, on your phone.
Wait, you're telling me I should make a home video of our worst moments?
Think of it as a learning experience. You'd be surprised what you learn about yourself when you see yourself arguing, from a different perspective.
Oh, I bet.
You might notice those little tone shifts, the eye rolls, the defensive body language, things you wouldn't even pick up on in the moment.
I can imagine. I bet it's super humbling, but also really, really helpful, right? Oh, wow, I really do sound like a nagging banshee when I'm talking about the laundry.
Exactly. It gives you that outside perspective we all need sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes, to communicate effectively, we need to know when to not communicate. Which sounds counterintuitive.
It does, doesn't it?
You're not saying to just bottle things up, are you?
No, not at all. Attzs introduces this idea of the 4-hour rule.
Okay.
And it's a way to help you decide when it's the right time to address something and when it's better to just pause.
Okay, I'm listening. Tell me more.
Well, it starts with a simple question. Am I too hungry, angry, or tired to even think straight?
Right.
And if the answer is yes, well, then postpone the conversation. It also helps you to think about, is this a recurring problem that needs a plan, or is it just a minor annoyance that you can let go of.
Okay, yeah, this is good. It's like hitting the pause button on a pressure cooker before it, explodes.
Exactly. Sometimes all you need is a little space and you can approach the conversation with a clearer head.
So helpful. It's like having a referee in your relationship, someone who can blow the whistle before things get out of control.
That's a great way to put it. It's about choosing the right time and the right mindset for those important conversations.
Absolutely. And that leads us to another crucial element of any strong relationship: listening. Turns out there's a lot more to truly listening than meets the ear. Okay, so we talked about how important it is to know, when to talk.
Right.
But knowing how to listen, that's equally important, isn't it? I'll be honest, sometimes when my partner's talking, I catch myself mentally planning, my grocery list.
Oh.
Or rehearsing what I'm going to say next.
I think we've all been there. And that kind of highlights this common misconception, right? That listening is just about being quiet while the other person talks.
Right.
But Attzs makes a good point. She says that true listening, it's an active process.
Okay.
It's about tuning into your partner's experience, understanding their emotions, making them feel seen.
So it's not about jumping in with solutions.
Sometimes offering solutions can make the other person feel dismissed.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They might not be looking for answers. They might just need to feel understood.
Yeah.
And this is where validation comes in.
Okay, so tell me about validation.
So imagine your partner comes home from work and they're venting about their day.
Yeah.
Instead of, immediately jumping into advice mode.
Right.
You could try reflecting back what you hear. So you might say something like, wow, that sounds really frustrating. You must have felt so disrespected by your boss in that meeting.
So it's about acknowledging their feelings, not trying to change them.
Exactly. It's letting your partner know, hey, your emotions are valid. I hear you. I'm not judging you.
That makes a lot of sense.
Attzs calls this the empathy amplifier. Pretty good name, right?
Yeah, I like it. How does it work?
So it's a 3-step process. First, you mirror, just paraphrase what they said, reflecting their emotions back to them.
Okay. So instead of trying to fix the problem, I'm holding up a mirror to their feelings.
Right.
What's next?
Then you dig deeper. You ask a question that encourages them to elaborate on what they're feeling.
Okay.
You could say something like, what was the most difficult part of that interaction for you?
I'm realizing I do this all the time. I jump right into problem-solving mode and don't take the time to really understand what they're going through.
Yeah, we've all been there. And finally, you validate.
Okay.
You acknowledge their feelings. So you could say, that makes total sense. I'd be upset too if that happened to me.
So it's reflecting, exploring, and validating.
Exactly. You're creating that safe space where your partner feels comfortable opening up.
This is great. I'm adding this empathy amplifier to my relationship toolkit.
It's a good one.
It is. All this talk about listening and empathy, it makes me think about something that honestly terrifies me. Vulnerability.
It's understandable. Opening up, being vulnerable, it can be scary. It's like you're exposing yourself, risking getting hurt.
Exactly.
But, Attzs actually argues that vulnerability is a superpower in relationships.
A superpower? How?
Think about it. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you're basically saying, hey, I trust you enough to see me, flaws and all.
Right.
And that trust, it creates a deeper connection.
That makes sense. But how do you get over that fear of being vulnerable? I mean, it's not like you can just flip a switch and suddenly be an open book, right?
It's a process, for sure. And it doesn't have to be this big dramatic thing. Attzs suggests starting small.
Okay, so baby steps.
Exactly. Baby steps. So maybe you share a small fear with your partner, or you admit to a mistake instead of trying to cover it up.
It's about those little moments of honesty, right?
Exactly. And Attzs, she gives some fun tools for this, like the vulnerability deck.
The vulnerability deck, what's that?
So it's a deck of cards with these prompts designed to help couples open up to each other. And the prompts range from easy to more, soul level stuff.
Okay.
So you can kind of gradually increase the intensity as you get more comfortable.
So it's like a game that helps you get vulnerable.
Exactly. It takes the pressure off.
That's great.
And it can lead to some really interesting conversations, too.
I bet it does. Are there other tools like this?
Yeah, there's another one called the Fear Swap Ritual.
Fear Swap.
I know, it sounds a little intense.
It does.
But basically, once a week, you and your partner each write down a fear on a piece of paper.
Okay.
And you swap papers and read each other's fears out loud.
That sounds kind of terrifying.
It can be, yeah. But the key is to respond to each other's fears with empathy and support. So you might say, thank you for sharing this with me. How can I support you?
Okay, so it's about creating that safe space where you can be honest about your fears.
Exactly. And then, to reinforce the positive side of vulnerability, you do something fun together afterwards, like go for ice cream or watch a movie, something like that.
Okay, so it's like we faced our fears, now let's celebrate. I like that.
Yeah, turns a vulnerability into something positive.
It does. And when we feel safe to be vulnerable, it creates the foundation for something really special. Emotional safety. Okay, emotional safety. Tell me more. Okay, so we've covered communication, vulnerability. Feels like we're building to something bigger here. Like, what's the ultimate goal of all this work? What are we aiming for?
Yeah, it's like putting together all the pieces of the puzzle, right? And this is where Attzs introduces the idea of emotional safety. It's that feeling of truly feeling at home in your relationship.
I like that.
That sense of deep trust and security where you can be yourself completely, no judgment.
Sounds amazing. But building that kind of safety, that takes work, right? Doesn't just happen overnight.
Definitely. It's a continuous effort. Attzs actually compares it to tending a campfire. You know, you got to keep adding fuel to keep those flames burning strong.
I love that analogy. So how do we add fuel to that fire of emotional safety? What can we actually do?
Well, one practical tool Attzs talks about is the safe word system.
Safe word, like something out of 50 Shades of Grey.
Not exactly. Ha ha ha. Think of it more like a signal, you know, something that you and your partner decide on beforehand that means, okay, we need a timeout.
Okay.
So in the middle of a heated argument, one of you could just say, I don't know, pineapple, and everything stops.
Pineapple. I like it. So it's like a circuit breakers for your emotions.
Yeah, exactly. It allows you to step back, calm down, and then approach the conversation again later when you're both feeling more level-headed.
That makes sense. Sometimes things get so intense you just need a minute to breathe.
And it's not about avoiding the conflict, it's about managing it constructively. The safe word is just a reminder that, hey, you're on the same team even when you disagree.
Right. Like, okay, we're both getting overwhelmed. Let's pause and come back to this. And when you do come back together, you got to make sure you're apologizing in a way that actually fixes things, not just brushes it under the rug.
Exactly. And Attzs gives a framework for that, the apology blueprint.
Okay, yeah, because I think we've all heard those non-apologies, you know, the ones that just make things worse, like, I'm sorry you feel that way, which is basically just blaming the other person for being upset.
Right. A genuine apology has a few key parts. First, you own your mistake specifically.
Okay.
So not just a vague, I messed up, but I'm sorry I snapped at you this morning when you asked about the grocery list.
Okay, so taking responsibility, got it. What's next?
Then you acknowledge the impact of your actions. Like, I know my tone was harsh and it probably made you feel hurt.
So showing empathy, understanding how your actions affected them.
Right. And finally, you make a sincere effort to repair the damage. Like, next time, I'll try to be calmer. Is there anything I can do to make it up to you?
Okay, so going beyond just saying sorry and actually doing something to rebuild that trust.
Exactly. And along with those big moments of repair, there are also those small, everyday things that can build emotional safety.
Because it's those little things that often make the biggest difference, right?
Right. Like Attzs suggests this thing called the gratitude microhabit.
Okay, gratitude. I like the sound of that already.
Yeah, it's about taking a few minutes every day to appreciate the things your partner does.
Okay.
You know, focusing on the good stuff, like, thanks for making dinner, it was delicious, or I really appreciate you picking up my dry cleaning.
It's those little acts of love, right? The ones that we often take for granted.
Exactly, and those expressions of gratitude, they can really boost those feelings of love and connection.
They can. So we've talked about communication, vulnerability, emotional safety. Feels like we've covered a lot.
We have.
But there's this one big piece we haven't really touched on. How do you balance your own needs and aspirations with your partners? You know, that me versus we thing.
Yeah, that's a big one. And that's exactly what Attzs gets into in the chapter. From me to we without losing you. She says that going after your dreams doesn't have to mean sacrificing your relationship.
Okay.
It's about finding that balance where both people can thrive.
Because merging two lives together, that can be tricky. Sometimes it feels like our dreams are on a collision course, you know? Like, what if one person wants to open a yoga studio in Bali and the other wants to be a Wall Street banker? How do you even begin to make that work?
Well, it starts with being honest. Instead of, silently resenting your partner's dreams, share your own. Talk about what excites you, what scares you. Let them see your whole heart.
That's a good point. Turning that potential conflict into a conversation, right? Like, hey, I know you're passionate about your new business, but I'm also worried about how it will affect our family. Can we talk about how to make this work for both of us?
Exactly. It's about working together to find solutions. And one tool that Attzs suggests is the Values Compass Workshop.
A values compass. Okay. Sounds like we're getting all metaphorical here. What is that?
It's about figuring out your core values, both individually and as a couple.
Okay, I like it. It's like having a map to guide your relationship.
Right. So first, each person writes down 3 things they absolutely need to thrive. Could be anything: creativity, security, adventure, whatever.
Okay.
Then you compare lists and look for overlaps. Those shared values, that's the foundation of your relationship.
So you figure out what's non-negotiable for each person. And then find a way to honor those values, both individually and as a couple.
Exactly. Once you know those values, then you can start figuring out how to live them out, Maybe that means scheduling regular date nights, making time for individual pursuits, making decisions together that reflect your shared values.
Creating a life that actually reflects what's important to you, both as individuals and as a couple. I love that.
Yeah. But let's be honest, life doesn't always go according to plan.
It does not.
And that's where Attzs' chapter, When Life Throws Curveballs, comes in.
Okay, curveballs, everyone's got them.
She makes this interesting point. Those tough moments, the job losses, health scares, all those unexpected challenges, they can actually make your bond stronger if you face them as a team.
Okay, yeah, I'm sensing a theme here. Facing challenges together instead of letting them divide you.
Exactly. And one tool for doing that is what Attzs calls the renegotiation roadmap.
Roadmap. Okay, I'm listening.
So it's basically a framework for for adapting to change, without falling apart as a couple.
Okay.
And the first step is just acknowledging that something has shifted. You name the crisis, okay, we're both stressed because of this job loss. Things are different now and we got to figure this out.
So no more pretending everything's fine.
Right. Then you figure out what's not working anymore, the routines, responsibilities, communication, put it all out there.
Like a relationship inventory.
Exactly. And then you brainstorm those temporary fixes. They might not be perfect, but they're a start, Maybe you divide chores differently, schedule more check-in conversations, whatever it takes.
Be flexible, adapt.
Exactly. And you schedule regular check-ins to see what's working, what's not. You gotta be willing to adjust.
That takes the pressure off finding the perfect solution right away.
It does. And you also want to watch out for resentment during those times. Attzs talks about the sacrifice scorecard for this.
Sacrifice scorecard. What's that?
It's a way to track all those invisible sacrifices we make for our partners, especially during tough times.
Okay, yeah.
You each write down a list of things you've given up or taken on to cope with the situation.
Okay, so things like, I've been working overtime to cover the bills, or I've been doing all the childcare while you focus on your new job, stuff like that.
Exactly. Then you share your lists and talk about whether the sacrifices feel balanced. If one person feels like they're carrying way more of the load, you can try to redistribute things a bit.
Makes sense. It brings those unspoken resentments out in the open.
It does. Okay, so we've talked about facing challenges together, renegotiating roles, all that good stuff. Feels like we're really getting into the nuts and bolts of making a relationship last.
It does. And speaking of making a relationship last, there's one thing we can't forget about: intimacy.
Ooh, yeah, that's a big one.
Because when you're juggling work, family, all those life stressors, keeping that spark alive can feel impossible.
It's definitely a challenge. Attzs actually dedicates a whole chapter to this, reuniting intimacy. She reminds us that intimacy, it's not just about sex.
Okay.
It's about that emotional, physical, and intellectual connection. That's what makes a relationship feel truly alive.
Right, because when you've been together for a while, it's easy to slip into that roommate phase,
It is, and she offers a lot of great tips for bringing back that spark, one of them being the connection menu.
A menu. Okay, now I'm picturing a fancy restaurant, mood lighting, a harpist playing romantic music.
Not quite. Haha. Think of it more like a list of options for your relationship. Different categories like emotional connection, physical connection, intellectual connection.
Okay, yeah, that's cool.
So for emotional connection, maybe you have prompts like share a childhood memory you've never told anyone, or talk about a dream you're afraid to chase.
Okay, I like that.
And for physical connection, it could be give each other a 10-minute massage, or just hold hands for 5 minutes without talking.
It's amazing how much closer you can feel just from a simple touch.
It is. And then intellectual connection could be watch a documentary together and talk about it, or read each other a poem.
This is awesome. It's like a recipe books for connection. I can see how this would help shake things up.
And it can be fun too, which is important.
It is. Are there any other tools like this in the book?
Yeah, she also suggests brainstorm dates.
Brainstorm dates. Okay, what's that?
It's just about planning dates that are a little outside your usual routine. Could be anything from taking a cooking class together, to volunteering somewhere, to exploring a new part of town.
Creating those shared experiences, making memories.
Exactly. And all those shared adventures, they can lead to inside jokes, a renewed appreciation for each other. But, there's this one big obstacle that we got to talk about: technology. It feels like our phones are constantly fighting for our attention, making it harder to connect with our partners.
It's true. It's like we're all in a constant battle with our devices.
Right. And Attzs tackles this head on in the chapter Thriving in the Digital Age. She says it's not about hating technology. It's about using it in a way that helps our relationships, not hurts them.
Yeah. Because we've all been there, right? You're trying to have a conversation and your partner's glued to their phone, scrolling through Instagram or whatever.
It's like you're talking to a wall.
Exactly. And the crazy thing is, research shows that even having your phone nearby can affect the quality of your conversations.
It's like our phones are these black holes of attention, sucking the life out of our interactions.
I like that. That's a great way to put it. So, how do we fight back? How do we reclaim that connection?
Well, Attzs suggests a few things. One is to create those tech-free zones in your relationship.
Like a digital detox.
Yeah, exactly. It could be something simple like no phones at the dinner table, or designating certain times as tech-free, like an hour before bed.
Yeah, carving out those sacred spaces.
Another thing is the digital love language guide. So instead of letting our phones come between us, we can use them to express love and appreciation,
That's a nice idea.
Could be sending a sweet text, sharing a funny meme, or even making a playlist of songs that remind you of each other.
Using technology to actually strengthen your bond.
Exactly. And sometimes, honestly, the best thing is to just unplug completely.
Go off the grid.
Yeah, Attzs encourages couples to try tech-free dates or weekends away. Sometimes the most romantic thing you can do is just put the phone away and give your partner your full attention. And speaking of seeking support, sometimes the best thing you can do is ask for help when you need it.
Because let's face it, even with the best intentions, sometimes we need a little extra guidance.
Absolutely. And Attzs talks about this in the chapter When to Seek Help and How to Find It. She says that asking for help is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of commitment to your relationship.
Like we care enough to get the support we need.
Exactly. She even includes a relationship health checklist to help couples figure out if they might benefit from some professional help.
Okay, so what are some signs that it might be time to call in reinforcements?
Well, if you're having the same fight over and over again, or feeling emotionally distant, or if trust has been broken, or if you're going through a big life transition and it's causing a lot of stress, those are all good reasons to consider seeking help.
So it's not just about fixing major problems. It's about giving yourselves the tools to navigate those challenges that life inevitably throws your way.
Exactly. And there are so many different types of help out there. Couples therapy, coaching, workshops. Attzs even includes a therapy menu in the book, outlining the pros and cons of each option.
Finding what works for you.
Right. And remember Lena and Sam, they were always arguing about how to parent their kids. And then they went to therapy and realized that their different styles were because of their own childhoods.
Yeah, I remember that.
Therapy helped them understand each other better, communicate more effectively, and come up with a parenting style that worked for both of them.
It's a great example of how therapy can help couples uncover those deeper issues and build a stronger connection.
It is, and it reminds us that we don't have to figure everything out on our own. There's no shame in asking for help, whether it's from a therapist, a friend, or even a book.
Exactly. Well, that brings us to the final chapter, which focuses on, the long game. Building a relationship that can evolve and grow over time.
Because let's face it, happily ever after isn't a destination, it's a journey.
It is.
And that journey is going to have its ups and downs.
Definitely.
And that's what Attzs explores in building a relationship that evolves. She talks about how relationships are meant to change along with us, through all the different phases of life.
Because the couple you are at 25 is going to be different at 50, right? And that's okay.
More than okay. It's normal. And she gives some tools for navigating those changes and keeping your connection strong. One of them is the annual relationship audit.
Ooh, I love a good audit. What's this one all about?
Basically, you set aside some time, maybe a weekend getaway, or even just a few hours at home. And you reflect on the past year, celebrate your wins, talk about the struggles, and set some intentions for the future.
Like a relationship checkup?
Exactly. She suggests asking things like, what's working well, what's been tough, and what do we want more of in the next year?
Taking stock, making adjustments.
Right. And to keep that spark alive, she also talks about creating what she calls rituals of reinvention.
Ooh, I like the sound of that. Rituals of reinvention. Tell me more.
It could be anything, really. Removing your vows every 10 years, planning adventurous dates, or even keeping a journal where you write down all the new things you try together.
Creating those moments of novelty and excitement.
Exactly. And remember, Grace and Frank from the book, married for over 50 years, and they've reinvented their relationship multiple times.
Yeah, they've been through it all.
They have. They're proof that love can adapt and grow over time, and their secret is that they see their relationship as an ongoing process. It's not static, it's always evolving.
They're a great example of how to make love last.
They are, and that brings us to the end of our deep dive into soul deep connection. Hopefully you've learned some new things you can apply to your own relationships.
It's been a fantastic journey exploring these ideas, and as Attzs says, building a strong, lasting relationship. It's not about finding the perfect partner or avoiding conflict altogether.
It's about showing up for each other, even when it's hard. It's about choosing love over and over again.
Choosing love. That's a great way to put it.
And remember, you're not alone in this journey. There's support out there if you need it.
Absolutely. Well, that's it for today's deep dive. Until next time, keep diving deep, keep connecting, and keep choosing love.
See you next time.